Welcome to the Rut-to-Roost Podcast, brought to you by Buckeye Bowhunter. And now, your host, Josh Grund.
I hunted the back 40 last night, and that was like the first time that I've hunted it all year. I've only literally been in there twice, except to just put cameras out and then to change batteries once, right? And went in there with the gun, sat up, just crossed the creek, and like I didn't go anywhere. I crossed the creek, first big tall tree I could get in where I could see down that path, 150 yards, set up on that. And when I was walking in, I put a camera up before you cross the creek. When we come down that hill, that little steep hill, I put a camera right at that like little intersection because I had an extra camera. And so I'm sitting in my tree, and I get a notification. I look, and there's 3 deer standing in front of my camera. Like, as soon as I got set up, right after I walked through there, it's me walking through, and then 3 deer standing there. And I'm like, what the heck? And so I'm like, I'm probably only 150 yards from it, but it's super thick. And I'm like looking, and I'm trying to see, and finally I like see like ears, and I'm like, okay, there they are. And I'm looking, and then I see a bigger buck. Like, he was tall. He wasn't like a big buck, but he was like tall. And he came down from like where I was parked. And he never walked in front of the camera, though. I never got a picture because I was like, oh, he's going to walk around. And never got a picture of him, but I could see him through my binocs. And then there was like another spike and like a little 6-pointer. And then he looked like a button buck. I think it was just a little bachelor group. Like they're starting to bachelor back up, man. So that's the key this time of year, dude, is when they start getting back on food, all those bucks tend to kind of group back up together. So if you're on them, usually you're on them. If you're not, you don't see shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
I gotta say,
it's kind of a fun little hunt.
I gotta say, that deer looks awful nice on your wall.
Oh,
it looks awful nice.
Oh, you mean this one here?
Yeah, that young fella right there.
Yeah, thanks. He does look pretty nice.
It's
I think the background of the podcast is might be a little too much, a little pretentious.
No, I like it.
I don't have anywhere else to put him, man.
I like it.
Yeah, he turned out pretty good, man. I like him. He's awesome. Like I said, I was sitting in here the other day just drinking a beer, and I measured him, and I'm not like a professional measure, but just for you listeners, I measured him, and he grossed 153 and some change and netted 147, was it? I sent you the numbers.
Sweet.
So, yeah, man. That's
very sweet.
I think he's my second deer in the over 150. So,
awesome.
Pretty proud of that. But yeah.
I would be.
Well, we're here to talk about the deer that you're going to have hanging behind your head.
I'm about to have an addition
here in the next couple months. But with that said, let me just introduce the podcast for you guys. What is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Rut-to-Roost Podcast, and I am your host, Josh Grund. I am joined by John Shiner here today. We're missing our third musketeer, Bryce. He's somewhere deep down in public land in southern Ohio. Like, literally nobody's been able to get a hold of him for a week and a half. So hopefully he's smashing some deer. I'm sure we'll hear all about it when he gets back. But we want to talk about the most recent, like, awesome events that have happened in the group. And that's what happened on a hunt that me and John Shiner were on last weekend. It was pretty awesome.
You want to fill everybody in on your escapades down south first?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can talk about that a little bit. So, my rut-cation. We never really kind of talked about that because there's not really a lot to talk about, John. It was a fun, exhausting trip. When I came back to work, I didn't really feel like I had been on vacation, but it was a huge learning experience for me is kind of what I'm taking from it. And, was it successful? Did I kill a buck on my trip? No. And I'll kind of talk about that, but I definitely learned a lot and kind of have a new frame of mind, I guess, coming out of it. But we'll start. So like I took my vacation that weekend, November 3rd, and I was off for 2 weeks. And that plan was to go to Kentucky for the first week. My buddy Jason Evans down there, he always lets me stay. I turkey hunted down there. Been down there a few times scouting and stuff, and that's awesome. Saved me a ton of money. So if you guys, that's a good way to save money on some of these out-of-state trips is if you know somebody and they got an extra room for you. It's a lifesaver. It saves you a ton of money. And you don't have to camp. I got a hot shower every night too, John, which was a big deal.
Dude, that's awesome.
But yeah, so the first day I get there, we got a couple different properties, private pieces that I can hunt, and then there's a bunch of public land. Well, the one private piece that I was kind of interested in, I had not really been on, except for I took a ride on a four-wheeler, like maybe 2 months earlier. And that's kind of where I wanted to spend my first day. My plan was to get in there at, as it was getting light out, kind of scout my way in. I was looking at this kind of this creek bottom that cut up through these two big ridges. It was almost like a bowl. And I wanted to get down in that creek, work my way up that creek until I found some kind of really good crossing or some sign. Well, I found just that. I found kind of a bench where this creek kind of petered out. And this is a steep banks on this creek. And there was a bunch of scrapes and there were some rubs in there. And, I was like, this is a good enough spot as any. It was pretty daylight at this point to set up. So I set up, had a little buck come down the hill behind me, bumped me or busted me, saw a doe. And this was all like the first hour I was sitting. And then I didn't see another thing all day until right around, that last half hour of daylight. And I hit the grunt call probably, I want to say it was probably a half hour before it got dark. And sure enough, I hear coming down the logging road. I look up, and here comes this really big deer right at me. So he's literally, instead of taking the logging road, he ended up cutting into the woods and walking straight at my tree where he heard that grunt from, which kind of threw me off a little bit because I had my camera in between me and the tree to film off of my left side because that's where the logging road was. That's where I'm expecting him to walk. And he's coming right at the tree. And my bow's on this side of the tree, the left side of the tree too. So I'm like, dude, come on. Cut left. Come on, dude. Like, you're not going to go this way. Well, he hits the creek, which is about 25 yards. And he's essentially directly between me and the tree I'm sitting in. And he decides to cut right. So at that point, I kind of like panicked. I kind of threw the camera out the window. I'm like, I'm not going to get this on film. And I flip around, draw my bow. I go, man. And he doesn't really stop. And he's in there's some like grassy brush in front of him. And there's some like really thick stuff that's like kind of covering his head. And he's about to walk into it and disappear from my life forever, And I just, punched it, man. And took a shot, hit the deer. He pinwheeled, ran straight up this mountain, and they got some mountains down there in Kentucky, so it was a little concerning to see him run like that up this hill. And disappeared. I got down, found a little bit of blood, and long story short, tracked till 2:00 in the morning. Came back the next morning, tracked another maybe 100 yards and lost blood completely. So then I started getting on the phone with a couple different dog trackers, and I was able to get a dog tracker out, which is very impressive. I know you were talking about with the buck that you ended up shooting and not finding.
Yep.
I mean, you really don't appreciate, like, you always hear, like, oh, dogs have a great sense of smell. You really don't appreciate that unless you, like, see it firsthand. It, like, kind of blew my mind, man.
Yeah,
Like,
well-trained dog. I mean, their skills and senses are just fantastic. It's wild to watch them work. You know? And how, you're tracking, you're like, okay, me and my buddy, we've tracked a bunch of deer and we're okay at it, but then, you throw a dog in there and he just, blows
like
you out of the water.
Yeah, like he's literally like he's on a railroad track, just going.
Yeah. And just expedites the entire track, tenfold.
Yeah, and that was kind of worth. I mean, so we ended up not finding the deer, and that's a big kick in the balls. Handing a handful of cash over to handing a handful of cash over to a dog tracker when you didn't find the deer day one of your trip. It's just like, wow, what a way to start off my rut-cation. And essentially the dog, kind of lost the track. And I think you talked about this too, how they can literally smell if the deer is like injured and dying or not, and they can tell the difference. And the dog gets excited when he thinks that he's going to find the deer. Well, the tracker wasn't seeing any of that, and I could tell too, just watching the dog. Like, the dog looked kind of confused at some points. He was trying to wind check things, and he said when it gets to this point, like, the dog doesn't really know, like, where the deer went, or he knows where the deer went, but he thinks the deer's still alive. And that's essentially what it was. In that aspect, unfortunately, as bad as it sounds, it did save me a lot of time, because knowing that I probably wasn't going to find that deer, that having that dog tracker there to tell me that and be like, yeah, don't waste your time looking for this deer, that saved me, 2 days of searching. Like, I would have probably had 2 days of gritting the properties I could walk down there wasted.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because of a crappy shot.
Some of the film, I saw a little bit of the film, and that deer he was a keeper, man. He would have been worthwhile putting 2-3 days of grid searching in to find him. He was a heck of a deer.
I just still don't know how, well, I do know how. I know exactly how. But I'm still not sure where exactly I hit the deer, which will make me lose some sleep, I think. But my iron will broadhead was like chipped, broken. So I know it went through bone.
Wild.
Yeah, you know how when I sent you
that.
Yeah, snapped off, man. The one bleeder on the one side, and then the same side that the bleeder was snapped off, that whole edge was like freaking alligator teeth, just just beat up.
And that's tool steel. Tool steel. Those iron wills.
That's that
Yikes.
sound that we heard in the audio when I sent you the audio, and I'm like, it kind of sounds like a big thwop, like I hit lung. I think it was just cracking some big femur bone or whatever that big shoulder bone is or something, And I think I hit in front of that, and that's why he bled pretty well, but it petered out pretty quick, and he'll probably live. Yeah, he was a big deer. So that was a bummer, and I'll be honest with you, that's why I'd like to do these trips more often with buddies. Not that I'm not self-motivated or whatever, but I was in a funk after that, man. And I got pretty lazy for about 3 or 4 days in how I was hunting. And I kind of left that property, hunted some public a little bit, didn't have a lot of luck. And then I kind of put all my eggs into another piece of private that I had permission to hunt for like the rest of the time I was there. And I had some decent small buck encounters. I could have shot a little fork horn at one point, but I ended up not. And that was about it. It was 70 degrees the rest of the week. Every day I was walking in a t-shirt, and I was doing all day sits every day. And the one day I literally wore a t-shirt the entire day. I'd never put on a outer layer. It was that warm.
Do you think down there in Kentucky, what do you think the deer population is compared to, kind of where we hunt? There more deer, less deer, or, because you'd think first week of November you should be seeing, something.
Yeah, the piece of private that I had didn't have too many like terrain features that were like really gonna congregate deer movement like that during the rut. I found some really good sign, and I found like the inside corner of like a clear cut, which is kind of what I was set up on for like 2.5 days straight. And I was hoping that would kind of funnel some movement, and it did kind of. It worked. I just never got a really mature buck to walk through there. But I'm not sure, man. Like, talking to a lot of the locals down there, they're all really kind of concerned, or not upset, but it's an issue with leasing. And all the private that I was hunting were like 30, 40 acre chunks surrounded by 2,500 acres that was owned by a single entity that was like like you could pay to hunt, right? So all of these places, there's so much of it down there, at least around where I was hunting. And a lot of the big bucks get killed. All the land's kind of locked up. When it comes to deer numbers, I couldn't tell you,
Are you allowed to bait there?
You are allowed to bait. Yeah. Which I still have my Kentucky tag. So I was thinking about maybe driving down there and setting up some sort of feeder and putting up a camera and letting that run. And if I get a decent buck coming in, making a weekend trip out of it or something like that. But I saw a ton of deer driving around, saw a bunch of deer. I kicked up a bunch of deer. On the public, I talked to a guy who was there the week before me, and he said, and I believe him, because everybody, when I was down there, were like, you missed it. You should have been here last week. Because it was cold. It was in the 30s every day.
Oh.
And the guy I ran into on public land, he was like, yeah, I've been here for the last 5 days. And he said, man, the first couple days I was here, it was like freaking World War III was going on down here. I was like, what do you mean? Like a bunch of people? He's like, no, dude, it was like deer were just crashing and running and chasing and all kinds of stuff all over the place. He said it was wild. And then like the third day he was there, he said it just shut off. And he said, I haven't seen anything since. And then I kind of saw the same thing for the rest of the trip I was there, except for the one encounter with the buck I didn't. Yeah. So I think the weather had a ton to do with my experience down there. But like I said, could I have worked a little harder? Probably. I'll be the first to admit, like I said, I was in a little bit of a funk. I was pretty bummed the way that turned out. And I wasn't going as deep. I wasn't going as, I wasn't scouting as much as I feel like I should have. I did hunt.
Kind of dipped your toe into, Kentucky to give it a shot.
Yeah. I think if I went back next year, I did a ton of scouting the last day I was there because it was the opening day of gun season for them. So I put a rifle on my shoulder and I went to public and I just essentially walked around for 12 hours and I found a ton of stuff that I'm like, oh, this would have been cool to sit on. This would have been awesome. So I think I have a lot better grasp on at least that chunk of land that I was hunting for next year if I go there during November. But yeah, that's what I think. It was an awesome learning experience. I learned a lot, and who wants to go down there and kill a buck the first day and not work for it, you know? Like I'd rather
Yeah, right. Yeah, you want to earn it.
Yeah. So, but then after that, I ended up going to New York, and as everyone's aware, my girlfriend goes to school in New York. Otherwise, I would have went to any other state. No offense to New York, but yeah, they got some goofy laws up there, but it's beautiful, man. And she's in like upstate New York towards the Adirondacks. So I was hunting some big woods bucks, which was kind of cool. And I kind of learned on that trip, I learned from my experience in Kentucky of feeling like I didn't scout enough. I took the first 2 days that I was in New York, and that's all I did was walk. You know, the first day I didn't even take the saddle with me. Let's just go walk. And, you know, if I find something really good that I think I need to sit on, I'll sit on the ground or something like that. But like midway through day 2, I found a awesome, like there was a pond, there was an old gas line up on the top of this ridge that dropped down, and there were this whole creek system that kind of converged at this one spot, and it was just thick as thieves. And then the backside of the creek was wide open, so you had this like really like intense transition line. And I found rubs, dude. I'm not kidding. Like, go to my Instagram, guys. Rubs on trees, like it was wild everywhere. They were all over the place. Like I thought they were bears, man. Like I remember I called my girlfriend. I'm like, Hannah, there might be bears down in here. Like there's like this is huge. Like I don't get it. But they call them, I guess it's really common up there in them big woods where the deer have a lot bigger territories. Where they like you'll see signpost rubs sometimes around here. Like I've seen some that are used year after year after year, but it's not as common, I guess, as up there. Like that's a big thing up there. Like they sit and hunt on these signpost rubs and kill big deer coming in to check them. Almost like we would like a big community scrape in Ohio, you know? And I mean, just giant scrapes, tore up, and you could tell that it, with the layers and stuff, it had just been hit for, 10 years over and over and over again, different bucks. So I knew I was in a really good area. So I essentially, the next 3 days, sat in the same general area, hoping to catch a deer. And the first morning I got in there, I actually had a really good hunt and had a couple. Well, about like 8:30, I saw a doe up in the thick stuff on the other side of the creek from me. And she was kind of like slinking around with her head down and her tail tucked between her legs, kind of like she was getting pushed by a buck or trying to evade a buck. I never saw the buck, but immediately in my head, I'm like, something's going on up in there. Well, over the next 3 hours, I, had a buck parade come through downwind of that bedding area. And, I'd get these little scrub bucks come in making a scrape, and they'd stand there and they just like, you could tell they were smelling, and they'd just be staring up into that thick stuff, and they wouldn't leave. They'd hang out for, 25, 30 minutes a piece. And then finally they'd work off, like, they could smell that big boy up there. I'm not going to go mess with him, or something. And about, I think it was 11 o'clock. So this particular spot I was set up on, there's a big creek crossing, and there's this really big trail that comes down off of the creek, like along the bank, out of this thick stuff, crosses this creek, and then goes up into where that doe was. So I'm thinking this is a great spot to catch a buck cruising. All the banks are pretty steep everywhere else. About 11 o'clock, I'm sitting there and I hear, and it's quiet, wet. Everything's wet. Like you can't really hear much moving or anything. But I hear some footsteps, and I turn to my left, and here comes this really good 8-pointer. And he's coming right down the trail. I grab my bow, I turn. He was just flying, dude. He was like almost trotting. And by the time like I got on him or was gonna get a shot off at him, he ended up not even taking the creek crossing. He kind of rounded off where the creek intersected and jumped down into the creek, like off this 6-foot bank. I ended up grunting at him once. He stopped, looked, and then he turned, went down in the creek, started walking across the creek, and then I was like, gave him a snort wheeze. And when I did that, dude, he was just like, see ya, just took off running like a bat out of hell, man.
Gone.
Yeah, I scared the crap out of him. So I don't know if he's just, been pressured, or, he was worried about another buck kicking his ass or something. I don't know. But that was my one opportunity at a really good buck. He wasn't a giant.
Mission, huh?
Yeah, he was 118, 120 inch 8-pointer. He was by far the biggest deer I'd seen up there. So I would have been tickled pink with him, but yeah, he didn't work out. And then I ended up hunting another 2 days or so, and I think I saw maybe 1 or 2 other bucks. But it's neat. It's a different experience if you're looking for like a real adventure hunt. That's what it felt like. It felt like I was on an adventure. Like it was just, you're 3 miles back, and I mean, it's different, man. There's like just nobody around, and just thick, a lot of cedar forests. All the cedar forests are real eerie and kind of creepy, and a lot of topography. There's bears up there, there's moose. So it was an interesting 5 days. I had a good time, but I quit. Their gun season opened that Saturday. I was there, so I didn't hunt, and we spent the rest of the time just hiking around. We hiked up some mountains and stuff like that while I was up there with Hannah. But yeah, that was my rut-cation, man. So I had a good time. I learned a lot. I'll probably never go back to hunt New York. Maybe I will, but I definitely have a better grasp on that as well. A lot of pins. I got a lot of pins. So if we ever want to go, which I think it would be cool, John, to do a hunt. And that's what I kind of learned while I was up there is everybody I talked to was like, you're bow hunting? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, what do you guys do? Everybody rifle hunts. So
okay,
I was hunting in the South Zone, just south of like where the line is, and their gun season hadn't started yet in the South Zone, but the North Zone in the Adirondacks, their gun season had been open since like October 20th, and that's all they do is gun hunt. And it would be cool to go up there. What they do is they wait for snow, they go up there, and they get on a track, and they track deer, and then they'll shoot them. They'll follow their track. It's a whole thing, man, where like there's a whole science to it.
Run him down.
Exactly. And it's neat, dude. I ran in a couple guys showing me pictures like at the store and at like gas stations and whatnot, showing me pictures of bucks they killed. And there's some big ones up there, man. Dark chocolate horns, short tined, thick, heavy with like, big dark faces, chocolate fur, like cool looking bucks. They almost look like a Sitka blacktail or something like that. Yeah. They remind me of, but yeah, it was fun. It was a cool trip. I'll be honest, I was excited to get home and hunt some familiar ground, hunt some does and stuff like that, but it's already got me, man, my brain is just going for next year. I'm dragging you guys somewhere next year, seriously. So
yeah, no, I'm in for next year. I think it'd be a cool experience, and just to do it, like you said, with a buddy, would be a great experience in itself too.
Absolutely.
I know we talked on the phone quite a bit, but I'm on the phone here. I'm not seeing what you're seeing, but to be able to bounce ideas off each other,
push each other.
Maybe my perspective might be different than yours, and it might, I don't know, lead us in a different direction, or
like when I missed that deer,
a different light.
When I missed that deer and I felt myself slipping, you'd have been like, "Quit being a bitch, let's go." Like we're going deep today, and I'd have been like, "All right, let's go." So it definitely would make a big difference, I think. But
it does for sure,
and more fun. more beer drinking.
It is more fun.
So, but yeah, let's actually talk about a story where something awesome happened. So,
yeah, so we, leading into our gun season here in Ohio, we put together a little plan. Thanksgiving was wonderful. I think we both had good holidays.
Yes, we did. Yes.
Spending time with family and friends. I got a big old live Christmas tree Friday with the family. Everybody's happy.
Oh, you went with the live one this year.
We've been going with the live one. So did ornaments and lights and got everybody happy,
That's fun.
But our plan was to go Saturday bow hunt and go on a property that you had permission on, and I actually gained permission as well. Give that a shot.
Yeah, for the out-of-state hunters, our gun season started Monday. It always starts the Monday after Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving was Thursday. We're talking about Saturday.
Correct. So, yeah. So the plan was to give it a shot on one of your properties Saturday, and then, do an all-day sit. We kind of had a plan in mind to sit in a couple of different spots, throughout the day, have a morning sit, and then transition into an evening sit. And then, if we didn't harvest anything, we were going to make a move up to my spot in Ashtabula and bow hunt Sunday, and then transition into the gun for Monday. So Saturday, we made going to follow our plan, get in there and getting dressed, drinking a little coffee, putting our gear together.
We had two spots. We had two spots that we were really considering.
Yeah.
Well, what threw us off was the wind, right? Yeah.
Sorry. That's it. Yeah, we threw some milkweed up, and we're like, ooh. This isn't really...
Had an east wind.
Yeah.
And we were at the Frank farm, so I brought John to the Frank farm. For you guys who watch any of the YouTube channel, doesn't set up very good for an east wind usually. So
no, well, we don't typically get a lot of east winds, so it's far. What do you think? Every year, how many times do we sit on an east wind? Maybe once.
Whenever the hurricanes are coming up the coast, essentially.
It's so infrequent.
Yeah.
But we had one that day.
Yeah. So we were
kind of had,
because I had an idea of where you were going to sit or where I thought would be a good spot for you to sit. And I remember being like, oh crap, now what? So I remember just thinking like, I got this one spot where, I call it the killing tree. You might be able to get away with an east wind because the movement is so tight to you, like where you would be setting. But, with the topography in there, it just seemed goofy. There was another spot like down the ridge, maybe 500-600 yards, where there's a, I don't know, what would you even call that? Just a cut in the ridge or?
Yeah. So it was, there's a long ridge that parallels a swamp. In the ridge, sits way above the swamp, and that ridge runs west to east, right?
North and south.
I think
north and south. The ridge runs. The swamp's on the east side of the ridge.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got my directions mixed up. Again, this is your spot, not mine.
Every time I come out to your spot,
I was a visitor.
Like, which way? You probably get annoyed. I'm like, which way is north, man?
Yeah,
yeah, it happens. Anyways, go
But
ahead.
I'd call it, so the ridge runs parallel to the swamp, and there's like a drainage that kind of creates a saddle in the ridge.
Yeah.
So I'd call it a saddle / drainage.
But that on an east wind, that would allow the wind to be blowing from the swamp up that ridge to you, and depending on where you're setting, that saddle's going to kind of funnel that wind in so you don't get any like goofy wind, is essentially what my thought process was, where you're not going to get a lot of backdraft. It's just going to get sucked right through that saddle. So we talked a little bit, and I remember, John, I remember you really liked I'm happy we ended up doing the thing we ended up doing what we did, because I knew we both were like, there's a really good scrape. So at the Killing Tree, we had a ton of pictures of bucks hitting this mock scrape, and it was like pretty consistent, but the wind was opposite of what you wanted. So like, we're in this conundrum, like, do we risk it? Like, just go for broke, or...
Yeah. And honestly, we did make the correct decision. It was hard. It's 5 a.m. It's black, dark out. And you're like, let's just stick to the plan.
And John's never been here before, so he doesn't even know what he's getting. I'm telling him, like, trust me, this might be a good spot. And he's like, I don't even know what I'm getting into.
Yeah. Yeah. The pictures are saying, hey, it's the spot. But again, the wind was not good. And I was I was pushing for it, hoping for maybe we'll get away with it. Maybe he'll catch my wind right as the arrow's in the air. And that's not the way to go about it. I know your intuition wants to just go where they're at. But if you don't have the right conditions, it's not going to pan out for you. I probably would have sat there and not seen anything all morning. Just because the wind would, who knows what the wind would have done. It would just ruin the spot.
Yeah.
But we came up with a new plan. You want to explain how we got in?
Yeah, and I remember walking in telling you, like just so you know, I've never done this before. So I've hunted down in there where you've hunted a few times, and I've had some encounters with decent deer, but I've always done it on an east wind, but I've come in from the east. So a little background. This property used to have really good access. I could access it from the west. I could access it from the east. I could access it from the north. Well, we had some issues with a neighbor down by my southern access spot where I usually go to. So, I'll just leave it at that. I don't park there anymore. It freaks me out a little bit. So like I said, I've only accessed the spot where John was headed, from that southern parking area, which would bring me in from the west, right? With the wind in my face, drop into that tree you were sitting in, and that's it. But since we couldn't park there anymore and we wanted to get to that spot, we ended up having to kind of walk right past the Killing Tree, essentially. And we made a huge loop, probably walked a mile.
So on our way in, wind at our back.
Yes.
Which is not ideal.
Wind at our back, make a big giant loop. And we're walking on a pretty nice logging road the whole way. And we got to the mouth of that saddle, and then I kind of dropped John off and was like, this is kind of where you want to be in. Good luck. And he went on with it. But I will say this, there's a couple different instances, John, where I have killed deer walking in with the wind at my back this time of year. There are certain times of the year. So like October, you don't want to do this. But once you get to the rut and those bucks are cruising and they're coming from miles away, and depending,
we weren't planning on killing a deer out of his bed.
Yeah,
that was exactly not what was going to happen, at this time of the year.
Depending on the property and the setup, that time of year, I think it is definitely doable to walk in with the wind at your back and essentially turn around and hunt facing the way you came and catch that movement at that point. The buck I killed, this one right here, I killed on a wind just like that. Walking in, I walked through the middle of the bedding area with the wind at my back, probably blew every deer out of there.
Yep.
Turn around, set up, and I was just banking on that movement. If you're not after a particular buck, a specific deer, I was just banking on that topography to funnel, general deer movement, So if you get a buck that's cruising, he could be a mile away when you get in your stand. He has no idea you walk through there. And hopefully it puts him right in your lap. But it's definitely doable. It feels wrong. It feels like you're kind of like not supposed to be doing it, because everything we hear in the media and everything, reading books or whatever, is like, make sure the wind's in your face, make sure the wind's in your face. Well, I'm here to tell you sometimes, make sure the wind's at your back. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, we made that big loop. And, as you explained, loop back around. And I got to the mouth of that drainage where you dropped me off. So now I was walking up this drainage. Let's see. I'm trying to think here. Yeah, walking with the wind in my face now. Through this drainage, cutting, walking up the saddle. And the way it kind of set up is once I got to the other side of the ridge, there was thicker cover to my right, which would have been the south. And then I was just going to, take a little hook and walk on the eastern side of this ridge with the swamp down below me. With the plan being trying to catch a deer cruising that swamp edge. I know you mentioned, I'd want to be in range of the edge of the swamp, maybe within the 20, being able to shoot that edge. Because they're going to run that edge, getting from point A to point B. So got up the drainage, took my little turn. I was on a deer path. And I'm kind of sidewalking.
Can I cut you off real quick? Can I cut you off real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
So just to kind of explain, this is a absolute just quintessential, or like I can't think of the word, but a spot that you want to be in during the rut, especially this time of year, post-rut, late rut, because all along that ridge and all along that swamp, it's not only a good transition line where that's going to funnel movement with the topography, but you have doe bedding all through there. So those bucks, did you mention that? Sorry, I was like in the middle of a coughing fit. There's doe bedding all through there. So those bucks are using that topography to move between doe bedding areas. So, just for a lot of you guys who are maybe struggled this fall or having trouble finding like those topography, those pinch points, those areas that are funneling deer movement aren't any good if they're not connecting doe bedding areas. Like essentially that's what you want. You're looking for pinch points, but you're looking for pinch points that are connecting deer habitat. And this is like exactly what you're looking for. Post-rut, bucks are cruising, still looking for does. Because this is what, the 22nd,
7th,
26th, something like that. And you have a transition line, you have topography, funneling movement, and you have doe bedding areas. So it's it's everything you're really looking for. But anyways, November 25th. So, and we talked about that too. November 25th is, and I've seen on my cameras in the past that I've always struggled because I've wanted to try it and take off like that week, like the week of Thanksgiving to bow hunt, because I always get the biggest, most maturest bucks walking around in the daylight like zombies that time period during that week, because they're still going, they haven't given up yet. But it's still a good time to hunt. So don't think if November 14th is come and gone, it's over, whatever. Keep hunting. You might have to hunt a little harder or sit a little longer. Those all-day sits, I think, come into play much more during that time of year. I think they would be more effective this time, the week of Thanksgiving. But it's hard because a lot of us have already shot our wad and we're done. We used our week, we used our 2 weeks. So one of these years when I'm feeling confident, I would love to take off that week and just see what happens, see what you can come up with, But anyways, you got to your tree.
Yeah. So before I even found my tree, I was on that ridge and it's borderline gray light, it's still kind of dark. And I'm like, ooh, this will be a good tree. And I walked over to it, put my hands on it. I go, ooh, maybe not. It's rotten and dead. And go to the next one. I'm like, ooh, this will be a good one. Go over, grab it. Oh, there's a leaner, widowmaker hanging right over. I'm like, I'm not doing that. So I kind of went from tree to tree to tree to tree to tree, keep going and going. And I ended up picking a smaller, I don't remember what kind of tree it is, but it had real soft bark.
I think it was just a little poplar.
Was only, yeah. But it was small. It was maybe 8 to 10 inches. So easy climber, but small.
Or no, you had a poplar next to it. I think it was an elm. I think you had an elm tree, and then you had that little poplar next to it giving you some cover.
So I had so that poplar next to it was still holding leaves. And that was kind of why I chose it. Because it still had the leaves. So I had cover, being on a little itty bitty tree. But I still had cover and I still had a way to break up my profile. With the thought being, the deer are going to come from the swamp below me, that they wouldn't look up the ridge and, pick me out. So that's where I sat. And then it became light and I didn't really see anything in the morning, early, but
another aspect, they cut the corn recently out in the big fields out to the east of you, which also kind of played into our idea, like maybe that'll be a better spot because they just cut the corn. Yeah, you probably got a bunch of deer held up, smashing everything that the farmer dropped. But anyways.
Yeah, so set up, hanging out, and let's see. So I'm looking down the ridge. I've got that deer trail. I literally set up right on top of the deer trail that I walked in on. And as it became light, I'm looking down and the edge of the swamp is like 44 yards. And I'm like, ooh.
It's a long shot.
It should have been a little closer. But I'm up, I'm sitting, and we'll just play it out. I'm not going to get down at 7:20 and try and redo this. I'm in a pretty good spot. I'm pretty hidden. Play it out. And then come around, 8 o'clock maybe, I hear ch. So if you picture me sitting in my tree, looking down the ridge, down into the swamp, that's east. So the wind is blowing right into my face, and back over me and over the top of the ridge. So I look to my left, which is north, and here comes a big deer. Antlers, and I'm like, oh, here we go. I get kind of excited, and I could see him out at like 65, and he stops and just kind of scans and stands and just staring down towards the swamp. So 65, I grab my bow. I look at my binoculars. I see antlers. I'm like, okay, he's good. I'll shoot him. So grab my bow, get set up, get spun, and I'm looking right down this trail, which is like 3/4 of the way up the this little ridge. And here he comes, and I'm like, the thoughts in my head are like, how am I going to pull this off? He's coming right at me. I'm sitting right on top of the trail. So if he continues along this trail, he's going to be coming directly head on me. So thoughts in my head are, how am I going to pull this off? Do I have to stop him? And am I going to take a full frontal shot I really don't want to do that.
Yeah.
With all my luck this year, I go, I don't want to do that again.
Try to get the most, the most, high percentage shot possible.
Yeah, I need a chip shot, man. I got to get, my juju on the right path. And taking a low percentage frontal shot is not, not the right way to go about it. But anyways, yeah, he keeps coming. I have my pin on 20, learning from my past experiences. And he gets into like 22 and stops. Right before he gets to 22, he went behind a tree. So I draw and I'm holding, and he gets to like 22, stops, as he was running that trail. I got pretty excited because he had to turn his head left and right to duck.
I just want to say
the...
that is my favorite like footage. When I get video of like bucks working through brush and they're doing that, something about that is just the coolest visual. I love it, dude. And like I got video of that small buck doing that when I was hunting with you. I was just editing it recently, and he's doing that coming through, and it just looks so cool, man. And when they're big buck,
it's awesome.
Like, I love it. It's so cool.
So yeah, he's ducking left and right, just getting through it. I'm full drawn. He drops at 22 and looks, kind of through me. He didn't see me because I was in a good spot. And so I'm holding on him, settling the pin right on the middle of his chest. And, in my head, I'm like, am I really going to, do I let it go? Do I see what happens? So I don't know. This was maybe like 3 seconds, but I'm like in my head, it's just spinning and spinning, take the shot. Don't take the shot. Wait, be patient, because I know walking in, we were talking, and I'm like, I got to be patient. I got to settle this pin. I got to just, go through a good shot sequence. So I have all this, noise in my head, and I think holding it on him, and then I think he gets a little bit of whiff of me, 22 yards. He's right below me. And I think he caught something that he did not like. So again, comes in at 22, lifts his head, scans, and then all of a sudden he gets squirrely as I have my pin on him. He does not, something happened. Again, I think he smelled me a little bit and he didn't like it. So he jumps off the trail and takes 2 bounds and then continues to look down down towards the swamp. And I'm like, oh, awesome. Now he's at a 1/4-2, much better shot. I just slide over, settle my pin on him, and, I'm like, okay, I'm shooting. And then I feel, most bow hunters can relate. I feel my whole body just jolt, just like everything, like a quick twitch. And I'm like, whoa, relax. Because I'm pumped right now. He's at 14 yards. I just had that jolt of panic. And I'm like, okay, calm it down.
Where your bow kind of tries to take off on you.
Yeah, like jolted on me. And I'm like, whoa, I'm way too amped up. Calm it down. I took a deep breath, let it out. And he's just standing, ears up, staring down the hill. I take a second breath, and let it out slow. And then all I did, I put my pin on him, knowing that he was at 14 yards. Lesson learned from earlier in the season. I put my pin, on his brisket, and I just kept thinking, okay, I've got a regular wrist trigger release. I'm like, don't punch this thing. So what I ended up thinking about was having a tennis ball in my hand and just squeezing that tennis ball. And that's how I let that arrow go and let it go. Pop! Hammered him, heard the drum pop, and I'm just, ooh, the excitement. He literally spins back around and takes off, going back down the ridge. Down the trail he went, goes to maybe 60, 70, I don't know, maybe even 80 yards, and takes a hard right turn and goes down the hill. I heard down to the bottom, crashing, thrashing. I'm like, oh man, he's just, running through anything that's in his way. Logs cracking, popping, whole bunch of noise, and then nothing. Quiet. I'm like, okay. Whew, this is super exciting, because as he pinwheeled around, started running, I just saw frothy blood on his exit wound.
Well, before we get too far down the story, maybe that's your mantra now, John, is thinking about a tennis ball. Maybe that's it.
It might be it, man.
Bring that in every time.
No punching, no quick, yanking. Just slow squeeze. Just crush that tennis ball.
I want to say, because I remember we talked about this, and I said like how, and for those of you guys who struggle with it too, and don't get me wrong, I struggle with shooting deer. I always have. I always have had, I always fall apart. And it's been a constant battle every year. But you have to remember a deer is always going to give you that shot, and being able to wait for it. And they're always going to stand there longer than you think they're going to. So whenever you stop a deer, or like what happened to you, they wind you and they bound a couple times. Just think back to all the times that happens with like a small buck or happens with a doe. They never leave. They stand there forever. And you're just like, come on, like either leave or do something. Like all these deer are going to do the same thing. They're going to give you 20 seconds, 30 seconds to take a shot. So, and that's usually where people get into problems, is they think like, this is my chance. I got to do it before, I just want to get it over with before he takes off. Like, no, relax. And like I said, I have trouble bringing this up in my head too, when this, it's going down or whatever, but just knowing that your chance isn't going to just disappear immediately. You got time. You took a couple breaths, and having the confidence to do that, no offense, after the season you've had, like, just awesome, John. Like, you literally learned from all the mistakes you made. You did it right. And the persistence of still like getting after it, the fact that it's 2 days after Thanksgiving and we're going in to sit all day on a farm to try and kill a buck, and you're still at, like, kudos to you, man. Like, for real.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I know a ton of people who, would, we'll try again next year, or, I mean, and don't take this the wrong way. I have seen people stop hunting when they've had seasons like you've had, where just nothing seems to go your way. And like, I've seen people just sell their shit. I've seen it.
Yeah.
So like, kudos to you, man. And I'm sure that was probably the best feeling.
Oh man, it was
just the
unbelievably, relieving.
It's like exciting. A weight off your shoulders.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because I've been having a super rough year.
And nobody talks about it, but it's like, it's not only the pressure that like society and like, fucking Instagram and all this shit puts a ton of pressure on you anyways, right? Like, it's like, you always feel like everybody's killing deer, but it's like the pressure of like how much time you're away from your family, how much effort money you've put into your food plots and all your gear and all this work that goes into it. Like, you feel like you gotta cash in, right? Like, you just got to. I've put too much
settle
time.
Or
yes. Yeah. So, like, all these people who talk about, oh, I'm fine with eating a tag. It's like, well, that's great for you, but I've put a lot of time and effort into this and a ton of money and a ton of time away from my loved ones. Like, I feel like, there's pressure on you to perform. How many times can you go home and be like, no, nothing, My girlfriend, there's been years she's like, are you sure you know what you're doing? I'm like, yes, just leave me alone. Like, I'll get, you know? So it's like,
well, and this was season 4, since I punched a buck tag. So I had gone 3 years prior, eating tag soup on that. I shot does, but not shooting a buck. And I was fine with it. But again, like you said, I'd come home, my wife would be like, hey, how'd it go? I didn't, no, I didn't punch tag. And day after day, year after year.
Yeah.
But again, I wasn't gonna settle though. I had my mind made up.
Perfect.
Stuck to my guns. But yeah, watching that arrow punch through right in the Boilermaker.
I knew you were confident when you called me too.
Awesome.
I knew you were confident. Well, to back up too, so when I dropped you off, I ended up going probably, I don't know what, 400 yards, quarter mile down the ridge, and ended up setting up on top of the ridge. I had a doe tag in my pocket. Luckily I didn't go in there with you because the tree you were sitting in, it was like, no way we could have gotten 2 people in there.
No way.
So I was setting up to hunt some does, and, I'm not sure what time it was. I hadn't been set up very long, and I look up to my right and I see a big buck cruising with just his mouth open. I could see his mouth open. I could see antlers, and he was just breathing hard. And he was like kind of maybe 150 yards from me, but between me and you, headed your way. And he was just cruising right towards John. So the whole time I'm just like, come on, baby. I'm like looking at my phone, waiting for some text message. And sure as shit, I get like a phone call and I answer, and John's just like, oh my God, I got the whole thing on video. I hit record before I answered, but I remember I was just like, oh, he smoked him, like it was so cool. It was awesome that like I saw the buck, and then, 10 minutes later, getting that phone call. I was pretty sure it was the same deer, but yeah, we jumped down and met up after that. And
backed all the way out, tore our sets down, headed back to the truck, unloaded our gear, and we wanted to give him some time, just because I felt pretty dang good about it. I saw the exit hole. It was right where I wanted it to be, so my confidence was very high. But again, you never really know, so I didn't even go down and look at the arrow. I backed down, or got down, grabbed all my stuff, went and met you. We went back to the truck, kind of, talked and got our heads right. You gave him some time. It was probably like 2 hours, right?
Yeah, it was an hour and a half or so.
Yeah. Went back in, found the arrow. The arrow looked fantastic, covered in blood. Looked good. And then we started the track, and it was no need for a dog. I'll say that. No need for a dog.
I know me and you had a conversation about broadheads, and I was honestly kind of losing faith in those single bevel broadheads. I had killed, I think 3 deer with them, and every one of them, was a less than desirable shot, but I just didn't get any blood trail. The blood trails were crap, just little pins and stuff. And, I'm like, man, if I would have a big Grim Reaper or something, at least I'd get some blood. Or I was even thinking, like, if I would have shot that buck in Kentucky with the Grim Reaper, maybe it would have killed him. Maybe I would have cut something important or something. But this is something important to keep in mind for everybody listening. Like, your anecdotal experience is not evident of what these broadheads are capable of. Seriously. Like, correct. Everybody wants to pick a broadhead and be like, I get so tired of hearing the fights about like mechanical versus single bevel or cut on contact. And it's like, what it comes down to is where you hit the deer, period.
Absolutely.
Like, that's it. And you can get into arrow
They're all
weights
sharp.
and they're all sharp, man. You can get into arrow weights. You can get into this. You can get into that. You can get into like reusability and all that kind of crap. But like what it comes down to is if you punch a field point, I do not recommend this, but if you punch a field point through the heart of a deer, he's done. He's not going 100 yards. Like, it's just like the blood trail of this deer, John, that you shot was freaking nuts, man. We were like slipping on blood going down the hill.
It was wild.
It was crazy.
And just so everybody knows, I had a day 6 Evo, double bevel, and the width was, I think, 1.25 inches.
Yeah.
And it was paint cans all over. Like
Just
Josh was saying,
spraying up the sides of trees. And I mean, it was gnarly. It was like a gruesome, you're like, holy crap.
Yeah. No need for a dog. We were good.
Yes.
But yeah, we followed him down that trail. Got to the edge where he kind of dove down, and from the top of the hill, looked down, and white belly.
There he lays.
White belly. Yes.
Dude, I remember when we were tracking, I was videoing you, and I was videoing all the blood that was like up the side of that tree. And then I like came up to your face and it came into focus, and your face was just like, it's the coolest clip ever. And then like 3 seconds later, you're like, there he is, baby. Like, yeah, it was cool, man. He didn't go what? How far?
I'd say 100 yards. But again, I think he fell down that hill. I don't know that he.
That's a steep hill.
That's a steep hill.
Yeah. So yeah, if he, and all kinds of logs and stuff. I slipped like 3 times going up and down that hill as many times as we did.
Because it was a cold morning.
Yep.
And underneath the leaves, everything was frozen.
Mm-hmm.
So all those wet logs were like
ice.
They were icy.
Yeah.
But yeah, to go down and put my paws on him, whew, that felt good.
So cool.
Wow, did that feel good?
Isn't that crazy? Like, why does that feel so cool? What is it about?
Unbelievable.
What is it about it? I don't know, man. It is the coolest thing, and I can tell you were pumped, man.
Absolutely.
I was super pumped for you. I was so happy for you.
Yeah, upon further inspection, because I'm always trying to learn, and we looked at him, and quartering 2, got him right behind, the front shoulder. And when we kind of, field dressed him and kind of figure out, because we're always trying to get better. What would this day 6 Evo do,
Yep.
And looking at it, it ended up really good shot. Hit the front lung. Actually went right over where the heart or where the lung connects to the heart and just severed it. It looked like the back lung was still intact. Clipped the liver and exited right in front of his back leg. So I guess that, kind of explains why we had insane blood.
I mean, you put him on.
I think it cut one of those main arteries over the heart.
Yeah, he had some intestines popping out. So, which tells you there wasn't a ton of blood on the entrance hole. There wasn't a ton of blood on the exit hole. It all came out his mouth. Like, look at his face in the pictures.
Yeah,
I mean, it just like everything came out his mouth. All of that blood was him just coughing it up, and I mean, yeah, it was like literally a perfect shot for the angle he gave you. You couldn't do any better.
Yep.
So pretty awesome.
So yeah, no, that's feels good.
I bet.
Feels so good. And I got to tell you, thankfully you were there, because to hoist his ass all the way up that hill was treacherous.
Yeah, that sucked.
And to think about me doing it by myself, I might have to hit the weights,
A little more, yeah.
over the winter break and get a little more in shape, because if we are going to go out of state,
well, that's
Kentucky, and
that's another thing.
Tighten it up a little bit.
Yeah, that's another thing, man. Having somebody with you on those out of state trips like Kentucky or something, that was always in the back of my mind, was like, dude, you're gonna have to get a deer out of here. Like,
you're gonna get
you
to
got
your
here,
truck,
you got
and
two,
the sun's gonna be coming up.
Yeah, you got 2 miles back here. Great job. You're in a good spot maybe, but if you kill a deer, like, you got to get it out, man. So having 2 people for that would be definitely much cooler. But
yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I'll put together a video.
No,
I got
that was
some
awesome.
I got some video of the whole thing, so that should be on YouTube here in the next couple weeks for you guys to watch. I wasn't in the tree with John, obviously, but the whole recovery and everything was pretty cool. So
yeah, awesome. Yeah, and then we did our I ended up going home, taking pictures with my kids. Oh, that was awesome. I got little kids at home, so they were just, just excited for me. I know the night before I left, this is cute. I put my daughter to bed, and she's 6. And, I go, all right, we say our prayers, and okay, lay down, go to bed, honey. And she lays down, and then she rolls over, and she goes, hey. I go, yeah, honey. She goes, Daddy, I hope you get a big deer tomorrow. I go, aw, thanks, honey. I almost got a little misty-eyed. Like, all right, thanks, honey.
Now you got to do it,
she
man.
rolled back over and went to bed.
You can't come home empty-handed
man.
now.
Well, I've been doing it,
Yeah.
I come home, she goes, where's the deer, Daddy? I go, well, maybe next time, sweetheart.
That was her just being like, all right, come on, Dad.
Yeah.
It's about time.
But to go home, show it to them, get some pictures with them, that was awesome. The relief was fantastic. We had I ended up going to deer camp for gun, and it was one of the more fun deer camps I've had in the last couple of years. Just not
no pressure,
having no pressure. Just I'm there having fun. Telling all the guys, hey, if you shoot one, make sure I'm the first call, because I'll get down and get out, and I'll help you drag it out. It was awesome, just awesome, the whole time. Just I enjoyed every minute of it,
except for the freaking Browns losing.
Well, yeah, that wasn't very good.
Don't hold that against us, guys, if you're not Browns fans. Bryce actually just texted me, John. He killed 2 does this week, and for their group, they got 5 does. They got one more guy. They got one more guy who hasn't killed one. They're trying to get today. Boy, he's going hard, man. So we'll hear about that. But
awesome,
yeah, man. So I mean, I guess just to kind of close it out, we'll talk here for another 10 minutes or something. But what are your overarching takeaways from this year? What do you see wanting to change next year? What is this? Any fires that this season have lit in you? Because I know I got a couple in me that I'm like, I want to do this.
Yeah, so I'm super motivated. Definitely, the season's not over with. I'm not done. I know I'm not done.
Me either.
But no, it's. I think I learned a lot this year. Maybe we'll talk about this another time. But did I succeed in my goals this year? What I wanted to accomplish. I think I've met a bunch of them. But to answer your question, the takeaways from this year, staying resilient, I think was a big topic for this year. I'm proud of myself for doing that.
Well, here's the thing in regards to your season, John. I think you've had a major jump between the last few years. I think you could draw a line over this summer and like where things kind of like, I mean, for lack of a better word, like clicked for you or something like that. Like you were on
Definitely.
you were on shooter deer, big deer, your entire rut-cation.
So yeah, there was definitely been a progression. And like you said, it's very noticeable. Since putting a bow in my hand, I don't know, maybe 7 years ago, I did crossbow for a couple of years, but actually with the compound bow and actually putting the effort into doing this, what we're doing now, and getting on mature deer, it's been a progression. Year one, I was still doing all the old stuff, bow hunting like I was gun hunting.
Yeah.
And just having some success. You still run into does. You get in the woods, you're going to have a shot on something. But learning from that and then reading sign and putting myself in good spots, understanding what deer are doing throughout the season, from early season to pre-rut to rut to post-rut, and then even to late season. I hunted pretty hard last year, late season. Was not successful, but a lot of learning experiences. So from 4 years ago, not seeing any mature deer. 3 years ago, maybe seeing one. Last year, seeing like 3 or 4. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is how this game is played. And then, changing things, not doing the same old, thinking outside of the box, understanding when you say that you're going to do something, following through with it. But when you're not, don't talk yourself into saying, oh, this is the spot, when it's really not. Okay, yeah, you have some sign, but is it the sign? And I think I've grown into understanding and making those decisions in a better, more meaningful way.
Well, and I think it's a progression, becoming just more aware of things, right? I've talked to so many guys who, see a buck do something and never ask themselves, like, well, why was that deer there? What was he doing? What's, like, maybe I should move over there. Like, it's just I saw a buck tonight and that's it. Like, being aware and like squeezing every ounce of your experience and trying to understand what's actually going on when you're out there in the woods is a huge part of that. And remembering that year to year, that's another thing I see. A lot of guys, and I've been guilty of this too, where you read all this stuff, we talk about doing these things, but then you get into the woods and you don't do any of it because you
fall into old habits.
You had success here 3 years ago, so and you're just like hoping and praying maybe it'll work out, and maybe it will. A couple of these deer on the wall behind me definitely fell into them. You know what I mean? I'm not going to pretend like I strategically killed all the bucks I've killed in my life. It doesn't happen that way usually, but
no.
Yeah, but like when you go into the woods, I got a fishing buddy, not to name any names, that I used to go muskie fishing with a lot, and we would always talk strategy and let's try something different, let's do this, and we would catch some muskie back when I was really into it, but we weren't like killing it or anything. And we'd always read these articles or watch YouTube videos. Next time we go out, let's try that. It's super different. We've never had success doing that. But as soon as like we would either not try it because we would just like end up going to the same places where we've done good before, or we would try it for a half hour and be like, lose confidence and go back to our old habits again. You know what I mean? And I feel like in fishing, it's kind of obvious to see that, but I feel like the same thing happens in deer hunting where, you might have these plans of grandeur and these big ideas, but you get out there and a lot of times just the not having confidence in that stuff because you haven't seen success doing it is really difficult, right? It's really difficult to go do sit in a spot where you can't see 25 yards in front of you because it's so thick, and you don't see a deer for, 12 hours. You don't see a single deer. It's really hard to go back and do that again. But those are the guys who are going to kill big deer every time, putting yourselves in those kind of spots. But anyways, being able to actually follow through with what we talked about on this podcast and talked about on the phone all summer and all early season, and see that success, I think is like it's awesome, man. That's what it is. Learning and growing and getting better at this stuff.
Yeah. And like I said, I hadn't taken a mature buck in 3 years. I think this year, one of my biggest takeaways, which often can be overlooked, is, the moment of truth. So releasing an arrow and making a good shot. You can put all your money into your gear. You can look at maps for hours. You can shoot your bow all year long, have the best arrows, the best bow, whatever broadhead, whatever. But when it comes down to the moment of truth and, letting that arrow go and having a good shot, there's so much that goes into it, and it's so important. It's so vital to execute. And really, it's so hard to replicate and to practice and to get good at. Every year for the last 3 years, I shot a bunch of does. But it's different when you're on a mature buck. And I don't think that should be overlooked. I had a lot of failings this year on that moment. And I think, like I said, my takeaway is that moment of truth, to succeed. And now it's going to be a goal of mine next year and the year after and forever and so forth, to be successful in that moment.
Well, you've done it now, right? So now you have
talk about it again.
Yeah, you have
I've
something
done
to
it.
build on.
I know what it takes.
Yeah. And you're right, man. And we forget, like, you could have all the best stuff. You could practice all summer, practice throughout the season, but when it comes down to it, like, it's still archery equipment and you're still trying to shoot a big deer, which if you're a normal person, you're freaking out. So it's like,
yeah,
it's hard, man. And that's when I brought up, that tennis ball thing might be your mantra. That might be what works for you, thinking about that. And that's kind of a cool idea, honestly.
It might be the ticket, yeah.
Having a mantra in that moment to talk yourself down and stay in it. That's my mantra. I always say that. Stay in it. Stay in it. Stay in it, because it's like to combat the fact that a lot of the deer that I've shot at and not found over the years or missed over the years, I just black out. I barely remember like what happened, where the arrow hit, why'd I shoot when I shot. Like, it's just, and being able to say, like, stay in it and focus on the experience and what's happening and try to remember it, and not just go into default mode and punch the trigger. Like, that's my way of combating it. Maybe like squeeze that tennis ball, baby. Squeeze that tennis ball. Maybe that's the thing for you.
Yep. To combat that blackout, that we got to not let that happen.
Exactly. Yeah, man. Well, those are some good takeaways. I think for me, my biggest takeaway is I'm really excited to get more involved in hunting in new places. And I'm, whether that's picking up properties here close to home, new properties, which, I definitely want to do next year, because I might be losing a couple of my really good spots. Just, selling. People might be selling some of them. We can talk about that when I actually know it's happening. But getting new places here in Ohio, or going out of state again and trying out of state hunts. Because let me just share a really quick story. When I was in New York, John, you know, I was literally waking up every day at 3:30. It was a hour drive up into the mountains, 2-hour walk up into the mountains, hanging your stand, getting set up, sitting all day, then walking out like that. It was like so much freaking work, dude. It was a lot of work for like literally zero payoff. I saw very little deer. And I think it was like the last day I had this little scrub. He had like a spike and like some droopy thing. And he comes in and he's at like 60 yards. And I thought I was going to get a shot at him. And I literally fell apart, dude. Literally fell apart. Like this little tiny buck. I got so nervous. I got more nervous than I did when I shot this buck this year. Like
Wow.
just broke down, the knees shaking, just like painful, like you're holding your jaw. Because I thought I was going to get a shot at this little deer. And it kind of made me realize, at least for me, that like, you know, it really isn't about the size of the buck, and it's more about like the experience and the work that you've put into it, right?
Yeah.
Like nothing to take away from the deer I killed this year, but I killed him my third hunt, and I didn't have to like work as hard as I have worked for some of these deer to get there. Like, I don't know how to put this, but like going on these out-of-state hunts, it's definitely going to be important that you like lower your standards a little bit, right? If you want to be successful, like if I'm going to Kentucky, I'm not holding out for 160-inch deer if I got 5 days to hunt, you know? But putting in that work and learning the property, and that's another aspect of it, is like, you know, a lot of these properties I've hunted for my whole life, I've gotten good at hunting those properties, right? I know where the deer move.
Yep.
You know, I could probably be somewhat successful every year on these properties. But going out and learning new land is only going to make you a better hunter, right? And that's what I learned kind of on these trips, is like, maybe I'm not that great of a deer hunter, man. Maybe I'm good at hunting the Frank farm. You put me somewhere else, because there was a ton of just like decision making and second guessing myself for 2 weeks. It was kind of, there were some times I was like kind of miserable because I was just like, I can't make a decision. I don't know what to do. And the more I do that, I think the less of that I will have. And like I said, all of that work and effort and feeling like you figured something out culminates on, you know, some little scrub 3-pointer. And it's like, it's all like, I would have been just as happy killing that 3-pointer as I was killing this big buck back home. Like, I honestly would have been. And that's like a really interesting thing to me. Like, if I can go to Kentucky and kill a 8-pointer and get that same feeling, you know, like, it's obviously awesome to kill a giant deer and show all your buddies and everything, but you know, that's not what it should be all about. It should be about that experience for you. And I think getting out of state, and I think this was a really good step this year, was learning some locations for the future, right? And we'll see what happens next year, but I'm excited. So
yeah, not falling into old habits. I know we talk about that a lot, but trying new things, thinking out of the box, and going out of state for you is just putting that into practice.
Yep.
The more you do it, the more you'll grow. And, you know, hopefully maybe next year we get a couple of scrub bucks and be proud of ourselves and, you know, put our tactics and hard work at play and succeed and just grow off of that.
Yeah. I think that'd be awesome, man. It'd be pretty cool. But yeah, you got any other closing thoughts, I guess, John? We've been talking for an hour and a half, man.
No, just, you know, if anybody bumps into me, I'm going to be standing tall and my chest's going to be puffed out, and I can't be more proud of myself.
Yeah, man, you should be. Seriously.
I'm flying high, man. I'm happy. This is awesome.
Good.
Just awesome.
Good. Yeah. And so that was one more thing I'll just kind of add to for, as a tip, I think for everybody who's already killed a buck, right? It's really easy to, you've killed your buck. You feel really, fulfilled, to just sit back and not work so hard the rest of the season to kill some does. Like, I'm just going to go sit on the food plot and see what happens tonight, and not kind of like go all in. But I urge you, and I urge everybody who has killed a buck already to still take it super seriously for the rest of the season if you can, and almost pretend like you're still hunting a buck. You may have punched your buck tag, but just pretend. And this is the time of the year, right? Because there's going to be seasons when you haven't punched your tag and now it's January and you're like, I don't even know where to start. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So this is the time of the year to get really aggressive, get kind of crazy with some of your tactics, go into those areas that you've never been in, that you were scared to because you haven't filled your tag yet and you don't want to bump any deer, and practice and see what works and see what doesn't work. And, what's the worst that happens if you jump a buck? Who cares? He'll be back next year, like whatever. And you might kill a doe in the process, but taking this time where no pressure, you don't really care if you kill a buck, see if you can get a buck in bow range of you, every time you go out. See if you can make it happen. And obviously don't shoot him, but see if you can make it happen and just use this as a learning experience, because a lot of guys, I think, they get their buck and then they're done for the year. They quit learning, right? Even if they're still hunting, they just go sit in their easy stands. Like I'm out here to kill a doe, whatever. And they quit learning. Like, still, every time you go up there to the Ashtabula property, every time you go up there, go hard, man. Go deep. Do something that you haven't done before and see if it works, and learn. And that's a way to get so much more out of your deer season.
Like you said, if you bump a big buck, well, now you know where he's at.
Exactly.
Or what he wanted to do at this time of year.
Exactly.
And bank that. Bank that information.
That's a great point.
If you can bump them now, or, like you said, Christmas, January, if you can get in there, even better if you can watch him get out of bed and go somewhere. Be like, ooh, okay, he was here. Why is he here?
Yep. Absolutely.
And bank all that information.
Yep.
Maybe it's, some sort of food source. What are they eating in January? What type of cover are they hiding in?
Yeah.
That's something we got to figure out.
And take time too. If you do bump a buck or you watch one get up and leave, if it was October 22nd, I probably wouldn't do this, but right now I've killed a buck already. When you get down, walk over there, go look at his bed, mark it on Onyx. What was he eating? Does he have a few beds in this area? Why would sit in his bed and see what direction the wind's going and figure all that stuff out, and have that written down in a journal or something like that. Yeah, you're probably going to bump that deer out of there for the rest of the year, but he will be back, or another deer will take that spot over. So who cares? I would definitely take advantage of it. It's a great time. If you filled your buck tag, if you haven't, obviously keep hunting hard. This is the time of the year to probably, depends on the way you look at it, be really aggressive or take it really conservative. Depends on like where you're hunting, I think. But don't let the rest of the season slip by without learning something is all I'm trying to say. So
good closing comment.
Yeah. But with that said, guys, hopefully you found this interesting. We really appreciate you guys listening. Seriously, all you listeners who tune in. It's awesome to see all the downloads and stuff. So thank you guys so much. We're going to try and keep this podcast going, keep this coming. Let us know, the best way to reach us is probably the YouTube channel. So, we put this on YouTube as well. Leave some comments or something if you want to hear us talk about something or specific topics. Definitely let us know there. otherwise, we'll see you on the next one, man. We're probably going to talk about some some hunts that we got coming up the rest of the year, some doe hunts. Like I said, I may travel back to Kentucky, so I'll let you guys know how that goes if it happens. Otherwise, yeah, we'll have some interesting podcasts coming up. But again, thank you guys for listening, and we will see y'all on the next one.